Almost every strain of weed you can buy today has a secret ancestor. Trace its family tree back far enough, past the candy names and the trendy crosses, and over, you land on the same plant. A loud, skunky strain from the 1970s in California called Skunk No. 1. It's not the strongest weed on the shelf, and most people have never even smoked it. But without it, half the strains you know wouldn't exist. So let's go back to where it all started, in the hills of Northern California, around the Santa Cruz area in the mid to late 1970s. The man at the center of the story is a breeder named David Watson, but no one really knows him by that because everyone in the cannabis world calls him Sam the Skunkman. He was part of a loose underground breeding collective called Sacred Seeds, and what they were doing back then was something most growers weren't even thinking about. They were treating cannabis like a serious crop, breeding it with real intention. Now, who exactly deserves credit for Skunk No. 1 is something people still argue about to this day. Watson always presented himself as the guy behind it, but a lot of folks say it was really a team effort, and some trace the genetics back even further. So we'll be honest right up front. The deep origins aren't 1000% clear, the same way a lot of old weed history is. But what came out of that work is not in question at all, because what they created was something genuinely revolutionary. Skunk No. 1 is a three-way mix of landrace strains from completely different corners of the world. You've got Afghani, a stout, resin-heavy indica from the mountains of Afghanistan. Then Acapulco Gold, a classic uplifting sativa out of Mexico. And Colombian Gold, a bright, energetic sativa from the mountains of Colombia. The usual breakdown you'll hear is about a quarter Afghani and the rest split between those two sativas. But honestly, the specific plants matter way less than what they managed to do with them. Because they made it stable, which might not sound like anything crazy nowadays, but you gotta understand, before Skunk No. 1, if you grew weed from seeds, you never really knew what you were going to get. Every single plant could come out different. Different size, different smell, different potency, different flowering time. It was a total gamble. What Sacred Seeds did was breed Skunk No. 1 over and over again, selecting and testing and refining, until it became what is now known as true breeding. Which basically means when you grew it from seed, you got the same exact plant almost every time. Now that might not sound exciting, but it was a massive deal back then, because for the first time, it proved that cannabis could be bred like any other real agricultural crop, with actual rigor instead of just luck. That's the breakthrough the whole industry is built on. On top of that, Skunk No. 1 solved a problem that had been holding growers back for years. The pure sativas everybody loved, like those Colombian and Mexican strains, gave amazing highs, but they grew enormous. They took forever to finish, and they were a nightmare to grow indoors. By breeding in that Afghani, Skunk No. 1 stayed shorter, flowered way faster, yielded more, and still kept that uplifting sativa high. Suddenly, you had a plant that was potent, productive, and actually practical to grow in a controlled space. It was the whole package, and nothing else at the time really compared to it. But this great strain in California in the 1970s and the 1980s had a serious problem hanging over its head, and that was the law. This was the height of the war on drugs, and eventually, Watson's operation was shut down by the police. Carrying a massive stash of seeds, he did what a few other American growers were doing around that same time. He left the country and headed to the one place on Earth that was actually tolerant of weed, Amsterdam. The exact dates here are a little fuzzy depending on who you ask, but somewhere in the early to mid-1980s is what is estimated. He brought a reported 250,000 seeds with him, including Skunk No. 1, and started selling them in the Netherlands under the name Cultivator's Choice. And that move basically lit the fuse on the entire Dutch cannabis industry. Watson linked up with the pioneers of the Amsterdam scene, including the legendary breeder Neville Schoenmakers, who ran the first real cannabis seed bank called the Seed Bank, and bought up a bunch of Watson's American genetics. Neville later sold the Seed Bank to Ben Dronkers, who folded it into what became Sensi Seeds, one of the most influential cannabis seed companies in the world. Those stable, high-quality American strains, with Skunk #1 right at the front, kicked off what people call the Dutch indoor revolution. Instead of importing hash from Morocco and Afghanistan, the Dutch could now grow world-class weed right there at home, and Skunk became one of the cornerstones of the coffee shop scene that made Amsterdam famous. And alongside Skunk, another strain called Haze was making its way over from California around the same time. Together, Skunk and Haze became the twin foundations that basically all of modern cannabis genetics were built on. You cannot really tell the full story of one without the other. Then came the moment that sealed its legend. In 1988, High Times launched the very first ever Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. It was a tiny event back then, just a handful of judges and a few seed companies competing. And when the votes were counted, the winner of that first ever Cannabis Cup was Skunk #1, entered under that Cultivator's Choice name. So the very first strain to ever be crowned champion of the most famous weed competition in the world was Skunk. That win put it on the global map for good. So, what is it actually like, you may ask? Skunk #1 is a balanced, slightly sativa-leaning hybrid, and the high is exactly what you'd hope for from those parents. An uplifting, euphoric, creative head buzz that eases into a relaxed, comfortable body feeling. Here is a fun fact that surprises people though. By today's standards, it is not even that high in THC, usually testing somewhere around 15 to 19%. But back in its day, that was considered seriously strong. And honestly, the magic of Skunk was never about chasing some sky-high number. It was about that perfect balance, that reliability, and of course, that smell. That loud, sweet, sour, skunky aroma gave it its name and became the gold standard for what strong weed was supposed to smell like. That signature smell actually comes down to its terpene profile, a specific blend of compounds like myrcene and caryophyllene that produce that unmistakable skunky funk. And it is a terpene fingerprint that got passed down through generations of descendants. And that smell actually leads to one of the wildest parts of its legacy. The word skunk completely outgrew the strain. Especially over in the UK, skunk stopped meaning this one specific plant and turned into a generic word for any strong, pungent weed at all. People started calling all kinds of potent cannabis skunk, whether it had any actual Skunk #1 genetics in it or not. The strain literally gave its name to an entire category of weed. But the real reason Skunk #1 earns the title of the strain the whole industry was built on comes down to its family tree. Because once you had a stable, potent, easy-to-grow plant, breeders could not stop using it as a building block. Skunk #1 is a parent, grandparent, or ancestor of an absolutely staggering number of strains. Super Skunk came straight from it. The famous UK cheese strain is actually just a specific phenotype of Skunk #1 that got discovered and preserved. It is in the family tree of Jack Herer, one of the most awarded strains ever. Sensi Seeds created Jack Herer by combining skunk genetics with Northern Lights #5 and Haze. It is behind Shiva Skunk and Super Silver Haze, and it threads into the Diesel family that gave us strains like Sour Diesel, Lemon Skunk, Island Sweet Skunk, Orange Bud. The list just keeps going and going. Trace almost any modern strain back far enough, and there is a real good chance you will bump into skunk somewhere in its bloodline. So that's the story of Skunk #1. a plant born in a Northern California greenhouse in the 70s that proved weed could be bred like a real crop, that survived a police raid, sailed across the ocean, won the very first Cannabis Cup, lit up the entire Dutch industry, and then planted its DNA into a huge chunk of everything we smoke today. It even gave us the word we use for strong weed. Most strains are lucky to leave a mark. Skunk number 1 left the blueprint. So what about you? Have you ever come across Skunk number 1 or any of the countless strains that came from it? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives.